Have you ever wished that you could snag the gentle wisdom of a grandma or the wide-eyed wonder of a college freshman, all for your latte cools? Well, same. Pull up a chair. We have a great episode for you today because today I'm chilling with Eunice, but most folks call her Junior, which I want to know about where that name came from. But Junior turns a simple Friday night into a miniature revival of cross-generational friendship. So first question is, how'd you get the name Junior? And second question is, what inspired you to invite multiple generations over into your home?
Sure. Well, first of all, my given name is Eunice Eugenia, and I'm in a sort of the sixth generation of Eunice Eugenias in our family, a very southern, almost dysfunctional family. And the protocol was the first Eunice Eugenia was called Eunice, and so the next Eunice Eugenia didn't want to be called Eugenia, so took a nickname, and that started an alternation, Eunice nickname, and I was in the nickname generation, so my parents had to decide, well, what will her nickname be? And they said, well, she's our first child, she's a daughter. We're going to have a son someday, and we'll name him after his father, and people will call him Junior, and that will stick and be an impediment in his professional life. So let's call her Junior and avoid that problem.
No way.
Yes way. And so it's something I've lived with for 80 years, and I sort of now have become, you have one-name theologians like Anselm and Augustine, and now it's Junior. So...
That is wild.
Yeah,
so you've been called Junior your whole life.
Right,
basically.
and they actually put it on my birth certificate,
No way.
JR, yes. And when I went to DMV in Florida to get my driver's license, I wanted them to put Junior on it because that was my identity. And they said, you can't be called Junior, that's a nickname. I pulled out my birth certificate and showed the comma Junior, and they said, we're still not doing it.
Well, I have a similar... This is not even kind of the same, but I have a nickname from my middle name. So I go by Liza, but my full name, and you'll really hear the Southern in this, is Rosemary Elizabeth.
Oh, yes. That's like Catherine Anna.
It is a long, drawn-out name.
Yes.
And my joke is always that when I was filling out, like, the ACT bubble form in high school, I was sitting next to Eli Cox, and I had to fill out Rosemary Elizabeth Cunningham. And I remember the teacher would always say, is everyone done filling out their name? Can we proceed? And I was like having beads of sweat down my face because I was trying to rush. My hand was cramping.
Right.
Couldn't fill out the bubbles fast enough.
That's funny.
But anyway, names are such a cool part of your story, and obviously generational history matters to you, and that's really cool that you're trying to bring generations together. So what nudged you to do that?
Well, I've always been generationally interested anyway. I can remember when I grew up in small churches. My dad was a pastor of small churches, and by necessity, small churches are intergenerational. For good or ill, there's always a church lady in that, okay? But you had to do things together. So I immediately learned as part of my growing up just how to engage in intergenerational relationships and how to communicate across those lines. But I remember when I was 12 years old at church camp, I thought to myself, this gospel of Jesus, it's really good news, but nobody's communicating it to my generation. And so I became very interested in that, and that led to decades-long work in youth ministry. So I've always been, and there hasn't been a time in my life since I became a teenager that I haven't been around teenagers as well as older people. Mm-hmm. A lot of my teaching ministry was with older, mature Christians, but a lot of then I had youth ministry. So I had those two streams flowing. But what started this you're interested in this particular thing that we've been doing. When we moved here, we refer to this as our third coming to Colorado Springs.
Okay.
When
was that?
It was in 2012.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And we, as just a empty nest family, we were going to sponsor cadets, and we found a house out in the Black Forest. We went from 3,900 square feet to 5,200 square feet when all of our peers were downsizing. But part of the house had a theater in it with a 100-inch high-def screen and Dolby surround sound. Oh, the Dolby surround sound is,
Whoa.
I mean, there are better projection methods now, but the Dolby surround sound is just standing the test of time. And so my husband and I thought, how can we use this? How can we use it? The Lord has provided this house for us. How do we use it for Him? And I wasn't thinking that seriously about it, but the movie Frozen came out.
That's awesome.
Okay, and the little kids were running around church talking about how they wanted to see Frozen. I want to see Frozen. And so I thought, well, why not have the moms? There were two moms and each had two daughters. Why not have them just come over to the house and we'll have a supper and then go down to the theater. And it was so hilarious because they all came in with gym bags. And my first thought was, did they misunderstand the invitation? Do they think this is movie and a sleepover instead of movie, dinner and a movie? And I had a friend who decorated the table. You know those little light icicles you can buy at Christmas and hang down? She turned them upside down so it looked like the Frozen
was coming up. Like
yes, all of that. And so we had this great meal and went down, and the girls took their gym bags with them. And every time a song came on, they put on these ballerina dresses and started dancing.
That's precious. How old were they?
They ranged in age from 4 to 11.
Wow.
And then so I started talking about that with friends, and they said, you know, we ought to do this on a regular basis. So then we started doing it about once every month, once every 2 months, depending on school schedules. That has been the big problem, has been school schedules. But we've had combinations of high school cadets, moms and daughters, older women, and one of the things I really loved was after we started doing this, they would meet up they'd see each other in church, and whereas in the past they would just walk past each other, now they're hugging each other and asking each other how their days have been going.
That's really sweet.
So that's the origin of it. It was Frozen.
Frozen. So you've hosted some shy 20-somethings.
Yes.
As well. Yeah. Who wonder if they should call you Mrs. McGarrahan. McGarrahan. Right? What silly traditions melt that age gap tension?
Well, what we do, and it depends on the movie, but I've got some really good stories about this. We try to make the dinner part, the menu and the decorations fit the theme of the movie.
How fun. You're going to have to give examples.
Okay, so when we watched A League of Their Own, it was ballpark food. And I still have the little cardboard hot dog containers and the red and white striped bags for popcorn. And we warned the moms ahead of time, it's junk food, it's ballpark food. And then we had lanyards that had little baseballs on it. And those always are conversation starters. So another time, this is my favorite one. I mean, we saw a lot of Southern movies like Hidden Figures, and we watched The Help and Steel Magnolias, so I would draw on my grandmother's menus for that. But my favorite one, and this is one of the best times we had, you know the Bruce Almighty and Evan Almighty movies, okay. We saw Bruce Almighty, that was fine. Then we decided to show Evan Almighty, which is this sort of retelling of the Noah's Ark story. And I'm thinking, what in the heck am I going to do for a menu design for Noah's Ark? And I thought, do I create a fictional third cow that he brings along so they can have a barbecue? No, you know, so I actually went to the official United States Navy website because the Ark is a ship, okay? And I found they have all sorts of menus. The Navy has the best food in the military anyway. And I got their comfort food menu.
That's an insider detail.
It is. It is. And so, and we got segmented trays. and like they use in the military and in prisons, and a comfort food menu: Swiss steak, mashed potatoes, green beans, and we got them sailor hats. And
Okay.
that was a real conversation starter. And so those are the kinds of things we'll do. We have themes for the menu and the decorations, and that just breaks down the barriers, because they would come in and go, oh, and start talking about it. And sometimes the meals would be casual. I can remember when we did the King's Speech, I actually brought out the best china and silver and set the table so that it
That's
would look
special.
like Buckingham
Yes.
Palace. Okay. But that also, this will probably answer something else that's on your mind. The reason the Evan Almighty was really important was not just the setting for the meal, which was just hilarious. The movie itself, I think, was one of the most provocative that we ever showed, because it deals with this man who goes to Washington. He wants to change the world, and he gets a call from the Lord Almighty, played by Morgan Freeman, to build an ark. And these weird things happen to him. He keeps growing a beard. He can't shave it off. He keeps being clothed in an old robe, and he can't take it off. He tries to stuff it in his congressman's suit, and it just doesn't work. And even the little alarm clock, it was the typical clock radio that you have if you're my age, a General Electric, and it would the General Electric would have GE, and then it would be 6:16. That it would wake him up at the GE 6:16. Well, Genesis 6:16 is where the Noah's Ark story starts.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And so it's just little things like that, but as we went down to see the movie, and then we came back up for the meal, for dessert, and around the table, people were saying things like, how do you know that it's God talking to you? And several of the teenagers said, we just have so many voices assaulting us every day. How do we know which voice is the right one to listen to? So we had this talk about how do you spend time in the Bible, because that's where the real voice of God comes to you. But then the other question that came up, and you can imagine this from teenage girls, when you decide to obey Jesus and follow him, you may have to do things that make your friends a little crazy, and they may even ridicule you for that. How do you remain faithful when it just seems like this is the weirdest thing in the world to do? So those were the kinds of conversations that we would have. Sometimes there would be just about Christian virtues. Sometimes when we watched Coco, which was about the Day of the Dead.
Yes.
And the music was great in that. But then that led to real talks about what happens after you die. And so it's been, what I love about it is that no one feels sort of weird if they ask some kind of spiritual question. They feel like this is an environment I can do this in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you said that every generation shows some sort of facet of the gospel.
Right.
What have the teens taught you about that? What have the people, because obviously you teach them through their questions, but what have they taught you?
Well, one of the things I've realized is that, and working through all the generations, you think that all the questions, you think there's just a finite number of questions that can be asked. That is not the case, okay? And sometimes the questions from little kids just are the ones that really, really blow me away. But one of the things that I've been kind of cognizant of is the fact that each of these generations comes to the questions that they have based on the historical circumstances of their lives. what things have they had to endure, both in their families, but also what's been the political environment. My generation had to deal with Vietnam. Other generations, my parents' generation, had to deal with the Depression. So, for example, for my parents' generation, the big question was, after the war was over, how do we provide for our children in a way that we weren't provided for? And so material comfort became a central organizing principle for their lives. And so then the next generation comes and says, why are you always thinking about money? And so there would be this challenge. And the problem is, one of the things I ask my older people to do is please do not read the web about general generational characteristics. And I know you've seen them all about how lazy Gen Z is.
we've had a few podcasts on this, actually.
Yeah. And
in the past. It was a while back. But.
I haven't experienced that kind of laziness. But what I have experienced is that the kids who have strong family lives, that where the families have given a sense of purpose to life, that those kids are focused on where they're headed in life, and they don't engage in the things that the sociologists claim are stereotypical. I just say stay away from that, because number one, you're judging a generation with a broad brush, and what's important is get to know it's not Gen Z in general, but which Gen Zer?
Sure.
What are their needs? What are their experiences? I think one of the struggles between, say, a boomer like myself and a Gen Zer is the difference in how we respond to our feelings.
And what difference would you say that is?
I would say that for Gen Zers, feelings predominate as a way of knowing and relating. And for boomers, it's more a matter of, this is what I think about this. I'm not saying they're devoid of feelings, but they judge their feelings by what they think. And so if they think, for example, you should go to a 9-to-5 job every day, they're not going to understand a more gig economy or creativity, the fact that young people can actually figure out a way to use AI to start a business, know?
I am in Gen Z, and I've been told in the past that my generation has been babied.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's a fascinating take. And I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
But it is discouraging to hear. It's discouraging to hear that kind of language, because then it's like, oh, do you think that I don't work hard?
Right.
And then everyone gets defensive about who they are just because of when they were born.
Right, right.
So it's really silly.
Yeah, and what I like about these, it's not the movies, it's the meal.
Okay.
It really is.
Sitting around a table.
Sitting around a table and talking and getting to know one another and sharing your experiences. I know that when the cadets would tell a story about cadet life and some of the weird things that happen up at the academy, the whole table would be in laughter, and just there is this shared participation. And the Bible is really strong on creating community and fellowship around meals, around tables. And so the movie is an excuse to come together for a meal, really.
Yes.
Really.
And do you do the meal before?
Yeah, we do the meal before, then we go down and watch the movie, then we come back and discuss it over dessert.
Nice.
But I give them sort of prompts as to what to look for in the movie. And when we watched the old black and white Sidney Poitier Lilies of the Field, which the young ones really loved.
I've
it
never
was
seen.
Amazing. It's very, very interesting. I had to just clarify some things because it involved German nuns. And they weren't familiar with German nuns in the 50s. So anyway, the movie is, like I said, it's the excuse to have the meal. And that's what builds the relationships.
So let me ask you this. If there is someone seeking mentorship, but they feel like they're on step 0, what would a doable action be for them to find a place like your home, or a place or someone similar to you that...
Yeah, that's really an interesting question. I was talking with some cadets actually today about that very thing, because they have been looking for mentors, particularly among the academy community. And one of the things that this cadet said was, don't jump into one of these relationships just because you want a mentor. You need to get to know people, find circumstances where you can just chat with them, and don't jump into a real quick relationship. My sense would be, and this has to be mutual, don't you think?
Yes.
Because the young person can be out, for example, coming to church and maybe going to a worship service, which is more has more people in another generation, and sitting next to them and getting to know them gradually, Sunday by Sunday. But the older people need to be doing the same. And we're starting to emphasize that in some of our ministry initiatives now. We're just on the ground floor. We just had this big intergenerational event between my older class and the base camp class, which is young adults. And it was just filled with energy. Now, one of the couples in our class is already starting to plan events to bring the young adults in, another big event, but less formal, so that they will have a chance to mingle and get to know one another a little better. But that's going to also have to involve some training, even minimal training with the older adults. One of my concerns is that one of the reasons we don't have a more healthy intergenerational environment, number one, we separate everything by ages. And so when you've got all the middle school and high schoolers across the street, Weber Street becomes like the Berlin Wall of generations. And so, but older adults think, I don't know how to talk to younger people.
And vice versa.
Right. And one of the things that this Dinner and a Movie has done is make the participants realize, just talk.
Right.
That's so simple. It sounds like you're having a podcast about that.
Well, I mean, intergenerational relationship is so important for both parties. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to see someone like you making that a priority, because that's how leadership passes down to the next generation.
Yes.
Everything that we do matters for the future of our church, but not just our church.
Right.
The larger church, the body.
You know what I would recommend?
What?
I would recommend we have a big Wednesday night gathering here, have a potluck, and then show Up.
Yep.
The movie Up, which is so totally about intergenerational relationships and how the little boy, what's his name, Ralph, and the older guy learn from each other. You know?
Yes, that's a great movie.
Yeah.
That movie makes me cry.
Yeah, we were all crying at that movie, so.
Well, I think, unfortunately, we're running out of time a little bit, but I do want to encourage our church family who's listening or watching, before you end this podcast, to think about someone outside of your age bracket.
Yeah.
Maybe it's your neighbor whose dog keeps escaping into your yard. Maybe it's a freshman that you met for coffee hour, or that silver-haired saint who remembers the original Star Wars premiere.
Right.
Text them and invite them for a slice, a story, a cup of coffee. And if you're brave, Junior's double feature night.
There you go.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We love you. Jesus loves you. And we'll catch you next time on the show.
Great. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.